All right, welcome everybody who is joining today's webinar. Thank you so much for being here. Happy Friday. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes as people join, but again, thank you for tuning in for this conversation where we will talk about all things leadership. I see people joining. Awesome. For those of you who aren't familiar with Positive Coaching Alliance, our mission is to change the culture of youth sports so that every child, regardless of social or economic circumstance, has access to a positive youth sports experience. We are super excited for this conversation about all things leadership with Deloitte Consulting CEO Dan Helfrich and WNBA star Napheesa Collier. Before turning it over to Dan, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have questions for Dan or Napheesa, please submit them using the Q&A feature, and we welcome your questions throughout this conversation, so please do submit those questions for us. And then I also wanted to share that this webinar is going to be recorded, and so for those of you who might have student athletes that you want to share this recording with, we will definitely be sending that out within the next couple of days after we complete it, and you are more than welcome to share it with your networks. So without further ado, I want to welcome Dan Helfrich, the CEO of Deloitte Consulting, where he leads a growing team of 80,000 professionals, so knows just a few things about leadership. Dan is an alum of the Georgetown men's soccer team, where he is currently the play-by-play announcer. He and his wife, Christy, reside outside of Washington, D.C., and are proud parents to 4 active children. So Dan, I will turn it over to you for this conversation.
All right, thanks, Casey, and happy National Women in Sports Day, which we celebrated yesterday. And it seems like a great week to have a true inspiration with us today that I've been looking forward to talking to all week, and that's Napheesa Collier. Napheesa, you may know as a WNBA star, the 2019 Rookie of the Year, a gold medalist for Team USA in Tokyo, and the current captain of the Minnesota Lynx. She also was a national champion and I think 4-time Final Four participant for Gino Auriemma and the UConn Huskies. And as of the last 7 months, she's a mother to Mila, who joined the family in May of last year. And then less than 3 months later, Napheesa, or as we'll call her today, Fee, was on the court. So joining us from Minnesota, Napheesa Collier. How you doing, Fee?
I'm good. How are you?
It's a good day. And I know you and I share a love of the discussion of leadership and love the idea that we can connect with athletes and parents and coaches, who knows, maybe a referee or two, and talk about leadership and sports and culture. I want to go back in time just so people understand your career a little bit, but give us an idea of what's happening right now for you in the sport of basketball, I think right in the middle of the WNBA offseason.
We are in free agency, so that's always a really exciting time. I mean, there's something comes out new every day about who's going to what team. We're trying to get people to our team, so it's a really, really hectic, crazy, stressful time.
So it's you're a player, but probably a little bit of a recruiter as a co-captain of, and telling people it's not that cold in Minneapolis.
Well, the good thing is we play in the summer, so we don't have to deal with the cold. And I was in Istanbul last week recruiting too. So I'm definitely got my recruiter hat on right now.
Love it. All right. So many would be familiar with your career. For those who aren't, I highlighted the accomplishments at UConn, what must have been an amazing experience to win a gold medal in Tokyo, and then significant success, including winning Rookie of the Year in the WNBA. Like, as you went through all those moments of incredible accomplishment, like, what was the most surreal for you as you stood there and said, oh my gosh, how did I get here? What's been the most surreal?
Definitely the Olympics. It's something that I've watched since I was little, and it's something I've always wanted to go to. And there's kind of like a lot of drama. Like, am I going to be on the team? Am I not going to be on the team? So it's not like it was a sure thing by any means, me getting there. So like the fact that I was able to make the team was like so special. And then having the experience of the Olympics, like it was during COVID. So I know it was a little bit different, but it was my first time. So I didn't know any different. And having that gold medal put around my neck, it was just, there's no other experience like it. So I want to do it many, many more times.
And I'm sure you will. One of the things that when I think about the Olympics that I know some people and coaches that even at the youth level wrestle with is sometimes as they start to coach more elite teams, you get a group together that have been superstars on the teams they played in before, and then suddenly they're on a really elite team, and people who used to be the star and the center of attention and the leading scorer, regardless of the sport, have to deal with another dynamic where some have to play reserve roles and some don't play in games at all. How was the dynamic of that, and how did you see the culture form with elite athletes all coming together on a single team?
Yeah, well, I was exactly what you're talking about. I played the most minutes in the league. I have that stat of playing the most minutes, and I would get in at the last, like, maybe 2-minute mark. I was the youngest player on the team. And I think the special thing about going to USA is that doesn't matter. You're just really happy to be there. I would have gotten them water just to be on the team, like it was just when you put USA across your chest, I think it's just a whole different mindset where it's not about me anymore. It's not about like your personal stats or anything like that. It's about winning a gold because we have such a high standard, especially on the women's side for USA basketball. Gold is the standard for us. So we really come together for that common goal. And I think it's really easy to put egos aside at that point.
Beautifully said. And I bet there's some coaches listening / watching that wish it was that easy and that mentality was that present as they coach their elite youth teams. I want to talk about the role of coaches in leadership and then captains in leadership. And at least from the outside, you've gotten to play for a wide variety of coaches in terms of personality, age, style. Just reflect on what it's like and how you adjust, or if you adjust, given the different leadership styles, the different approaches of the coaches that you've played for.
So I think I've been really lucky, honestly, in my coaches. I've had great coaches my entire life, which not everyone can say that. And they've all had similar styles where I go on teams where the coaches are yellers. So I got the experience from high school. Gino's a yeller, Cheryl's a yeller. So thankfully, I have a tough skin when it comes to that. I know not everyone was brought up that way, so it can be tough. Having someone scream at you is not something that happens in the real world. So if it hasn't happened when you come on the team, I know it can be difficult. But for me, I like it. I think having a high standard and expectation for your players is what pushes them to become their best. And if you're not being challenged, then you're not going to become the best player that you can be. So that's kind of how I adjust. It's never easy having someone yell at you like that, but it's really taking what they're saying. And it's easier said than done, like hearing the words instead of the way that they're being said. But just try to get like the message out of what they're trying to get out of you. Are they wanting you to run harder? Are they wanting you to take different shots? Just like try to get what that message is at the core of it instead of the yelling behind it.
So let's explore that, because this organization that you and I both care a lot about, Positive Coaching Alliance, and Casey did a good job of describing the mission, wants to create a more predictable, positive youth sports experience. And one of the things I love about PCA is positive doesn't mean always happy. It doesn't mean always joyful. It doesn't mean there's never yelling. But how do you see coaches who tend to be a little bit more direct, a little bit more yelling, how do they create positivity and joy and laughter and camaraderie in team culture, even if the way they communicate at intense times tends to be a little more yelling?
Yeah, I think, it's what you say to people, it's like you're yelling at them to get the best out of them, never to bring them down. So you're not attacking their character. You have to let them know that I'm doing this because I want to get the best out of you as a player. It's not personal. Like, I'm not attacking you, your character, who you are, your family. I'm doing this because I'm passionate about the game. I want you to be passionate about the game, and we can have fun together. When you are emotional about what you're doing, there's going to be highs and lows. And it's, like I said, it's not fun when your coach is getting on to you, but they're doing it for a reason, for the greater good of the team and to get the best out of you. So I think that's positive, and everyone has fun when you're winning. So when you're getting the best out of your players, it's fun when, you start meshing together, you get that chemistry and you start winning games.
So really valuable insight about coaches. Now, you've played at an elite level. You've been a captain in many environments, including the current one you're in. As you reflect on your own development as a leader and you've seen other captains, like, describe what you think the most important attributes are of a captain. And maybe in particular, given what you've shared about coaches, captains who are effective on teams with coaches who tend to be a little more direct.
I think the best thing about captains is, first of all, knowing your players, like your teammates, because everyone likes to be approached in a different way. Like some people want to be told directly. Some people you need to maybe pull them aside. But I think the number one thing is accountability. A captain has to be able to hold the team accountable. And honestly, the coach, like, you're only going to get so far. You're not on the court with them. You need to have reliable captains where you can speak through them. And it's like a two-way path where you can talk to the captains, they can talk to the team. Because sometimes it's hard, like when a coach is on you, maybe you don't want to listen to them, but you'll listen to your teammate, you'll listen to the person who's the floor general on the floor with you. So the captain is really, really important for the team.
And have you evolved in the way you as a captain think about giving feedback to your teammates? One of the things that we often hear players, gosh, these are my friends, and we hang out all the time. And maybe, as is your case right now, I'm actually younger than some of the teammates that I'm responsible for and captain for. And sometimes I have to deliver them a message that isn't fun. Like, have you evolved the way you think about that and how you give feedback?
I have, because naturally, first of all, I'm not a very confrontational person. And so my leadership style before was I lead by example. Like I know I'm not super confrontational, but I'm a hard worker. I can lead by that way. But these past couple of years since I've been on the Lynx, I'm trying to grow in my leadership style and be more vocal and be that for my team. And so what I found, like, I like to pull people aside. Not a lot of people like to get called out in front of the entire team. So pulling people aside, I found, is effective for me. And I think that's another thing, like finding what works for the individual, because you're not going to change who you as a person. You can grow, you can become better at things and, build those attributes like leadership. But I'm never going to be a person who's screaming at you on the court in front of everyone. Sorry, our lights are going off. But I will hold you accountable, and I can pull you aside and say, you're not doing this. I need this from you. And so that's what has worked for me.
How about so helpful with the process of providing feedback and sort of staying true to yourself, to your teammates? How about the process of, as a captain or a senior, important, respected player on the team, providing feedback to the coach? Which, one of the things, as Casey said, I lead a huge organization. One of the things I'm always sensitive to is, how do I make sure I create an environment where people on my team feel really comfortable providing me feedback? I wonder how you think about providing feedback to the coach, when you think about providing feedback to the coach, and if there's anything that coaches have done to make it more comfortable for you to feel like you can provide that feedback and they want it.
I think the most important thing, like as a player, thinking about what I want in a coach, is first of all, someone I can trust. Like, I know if I tell you something that it's going to stay between us, you're not having conversation with everyone else. And I find out that you've been talking about me in the conversation we had. So trust is a huge thing. And then just being approachable, saying, like, making it known from the beginning. Like I said, I'm here for you guys. I might be hard on you on the court, but you can come to me with anything and I'll help you through it, kind of thing. And from what I've heard from a lot of players too, same as what I said, trust is like the number one thing, just making sure that you're a trustworthy outlet for us to talk to.
I love it. And everything I see in business today, in sports today, is that trust is the most important currency. And coaches that get the most trust from their players that get the most trust from each other, organizations that get the most trust with their fans, companies with customers, companies with employees. Trust is it's the number one currency right now. So one of the things I always talk about, Fee, is, I want to be a servant leader. I want to lead like a captain to my team. And I think to do that, you have to have an attitude of, I'm a leader in training. Like, I'm not a finished product because I'm a CEO. You're not a finished product because someone put a C on your jersey and put a gold medal around your neck. Like, how do you intentionally try to improve yourself as a leader, to learn, etc.?
I try to look at the people who did it before me. So I am the main captain on the team now, but I wasn't before. You know, there's always like a learning process. I came on the team as a rookie. There was vets that I was looking at. What are their leadership styles? I try to think about the leadership styles that I like and what I've seen on different teams that I've been on. Like you said, there's always learning. I mean, there's going to be days where even though you're the captain and you want to be like the gold standard for the team, you want to be their rock, there's days where the team's going to have to pick you up. And that kind of builds trust between the team. Like, you're not up on a pedestal. I'm right here with you guys. I'm learning. I want to be with you. Like, I like feedback. If you don't like when I talk to you like this, let me know. If you like to be coached this way, let me know. So really making it like an open book with them, saying if there's anything you want to talk to me about, I'm here. Just being really transparent with that, I think, is important.
So, Fee, you've been on a lot of super successful teams. You've done a lot of winning, but there have been moments that there's been some losing, or where the performance is a little, as a team, is below sort of the amazing standard, like perhaps some years at UConn. What lessons have you learned from how teams have dealt maybe well or maybe not so well in moments where we're in a rut, where we're expecting some standard, we've lost 5 of 7 games, people are getting down? Maybe can you reflect on some times you've seen teams / coaches do well in that situation, or times when maybe they haven't, and what you learned from it?
Yeah. When you're down in the trenches like that, that's when you really need leadership and good coaching, because like I said, everyone's having fun when you're winning. It's really easy to get along. It's easy to have a positive attitude. But when you're on a losing streak, or you're plagued with injuries like we had last year, things aren't going your way, is when, it's when it's the hardest. So something that I think is really good is when you have team building activities for that, because when you're on the court and there's a slump, you can feel it, and it becomes like rifts sometimes between the teammates. So we'll do like a movie night, or we'll do like escape room or something like that, something to bring us together outside of the court. And that really helps repair it, just to kind of like lift your spirits and try to get your mind off the game, which is what you're stressing about all the time, to try to build chemistry off the court again. And then it always translates.
My escape room record recently is very poor. It's been very disappointing. I'm 0 for my last 3. How are you? Good?
I mean, I'm always on a team, but yeah, we always get through.
I love it. So one of the things that I think is interesting, and as I talk to coaches, we talk about the culture of a team. And a team, let's say an average basketball team is 15 players, a soccer team might be 25, a football team's bigger than that, et cetera. And at times people talk like they want the team to be a single unified unit. And there's other times when people recognize that there might actually be subgroups within the team. You know, someone might call them cliques, but someone might just say subgroups. There's going to naturally be little groups of people within the team. Like, and some coaches I know see that as great and healthy, and some say, oh no, I feel like my team's getting cliquey. What's your view about culture within a 15-person team, and how you think about that?
For that, I actually think it's different at different levels. So for my professional level now, and I think this is true for every level as well, but I'll get into how I think it's different. You don't all have to be best friends. Like, you're never going to love every single person on your team, but there does need to be a level of respect when you're playing and trust when you're playing. So if you don't have that, that's when it's a problem. But I was going to say, like, maybe in high school, like I loved, like, my team was a unit. We weren't super cliquey, and I felt like that age, you know, you don't want to ever feel left out and things like that. So that might be more important. But as you grow older, as long as trust and respect is there, then I think the team is solid, because it's really, really hard to find a group of 12 people who are best friends.
Indeed. I want to get back to the thing, and I know there's some commentary about it around that you've been with a lot of direct feedback, folks. And I'll tell you, when I talk to coaches, there's a lot of anxiety in coaches right now about being direct, and and a lot of conversation in the national media about challenges with directness, et cetera. So how do you, how would you coach coaches to be their true selves, which, as you said, for some of the coaches you've had, is to be really direct and clear in their feedback without sort of losing the team or without losing and shredding the confidence of an individual?
That's hard because that's not how I grew up. So, I mean, I can just say for what my opinion is because I like directness and I think it's the best way. But always, I mean, this is true for everything. Say it in like a respectful manner where you're not trying to tear them down. You're saying like, this is the fact, you need to get better at shooting, and you're doing it because you want them to get better. You're not doing it to tear them down. I think maybe, I mean, I don't know, that's especially in high school. I feel like for me personally, it's like you take everything more personally. You're like in that weird stage where you're becoming an adult and it's like, okay, do they mean it? Do they hate me when they're saying this? But when you make it clear, like when I'm talking about this, it's for the greater good of the team. I mean, it helps. I don't know. That's kind of a hard one because I don't agree. Like, I think you should be direct. So that's just my opinion on it.
How many technical fouls about in your playing career since high school for you?
I literally think only like one or two.
That's what I would have predicted. Yeah. So speaking of leadership and being a captain, one of the things, and you talked about free agency, is you talk about building a culture and organizations or youth sports leagues or youth sports teams. They like the idea of building a culture, but people come in and out of the team. People join via free agency. In the youth level, someone moves from out of town, players get injured, so there's disruption. What have you found as the way to, you'll get rookies in who are wide-eyed, coming out of the draft and joining your team. What have you found to be good techniques to assimilate those new people to an existing culture as seamlessly as possible?
So from our level, for example, we recruit. So having like a core value set in the player that you bring is really important because you need to have people who are coachable, good teammates, like are willing to work hard. If you have that at the core, it's a lot easier to spread the culture that you want. If you have people who don't care, they're only out for themselves, they're selfish. I mean, it's just really hard to do that on any level. So having, there's going to be players who have been there before. So having like a core group of players who know the value set and are willing to help spread that throughout the team is important. And we always have like a team meeting in the beginning saying, this is the rules and this is how it goes around here. And then the players who have been here kind of enforce it throughout the season. And then building that chemistry comes from, obviously in preseason, we're together all the time and we do like dinners together or like I said, movies or things like that to build the chemistry. But the culture is set in the beginning of whatever season it is.
One of the things that I personally think is the society, and particularly in the US, has moved a lot on in the last few years, is the recognition that inclusivity and equity are fundamental to healthy cultures and high performing teams. I wonder, as you think about the most successful teams, the most successful organizations you've been a part of, what role has inclusivity in sort of the day-to-day culture played in, you think, the on-the-court performance of those teams?
It's really important because you want everyone to feel welcome and a part of the team. Like that's part of the team chemistry and the culture that we're talking about, that you feel like a unit. So if you feel ostracized or that like someone has a bias against you, you're not going to feel close to them. You're not going to feel like you want to put 100% into whatever organization it is. And so to feel that inclusivity, it brings the team together, and you can always, the chemistry always translates onto the court and into the game. So you can tell when a team is close or when they get along and they respect each other and when they don't.
So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about leadership and how you think it translates to success off the court, which you're still in the early stages. I'm going to call it the early stages of your on the court career, but I'm sure you're thinking about things that might happen after, and you've observed lots of other leaders make a transition from on the court to elsewhere. And look, the relationship between women leaders in business and competitive sports is actually pretty clear. I think I saw a survey that 80% of the Fortune 500 female executives reported playing competitive sports in their lifetime. Like, how do you think about the translation of on-field, on-court leadership experience to what you think is required to be successful in other walks of life?
There's so much correlation. I mean, the confidence builder that it brings you, like the leadership skills, the delegation, I mean, like the managing of people, because you have so many different, you have 12 different personalities on your team, and being able to manage that and make sure they get along. I mean, like the work ethic, there's just so many correlations that you need in basketball, but you need in everything else in life. And so, especially when you have like a leader or a captain on a team where they're used to kind of being that way and like delegating or pulling people aside, holding them accountable, like being the hardest worker on the team. When you translate that to the workforce, it'll really propel you in whatever you're doing.
Is that something that you see, players talking about and teams talking about now? Maybe it's in the off season. Otherwise, like, how might my life, my career translate out of this sport, and being, curious about? I know even at Deloitte, we've had some WNBA players as interns in the off season, et cetera. Like, is that a topic of conversation?
Yes, it's a huge topic of conversation, because we know we're not going to be able to play forever. And plus, our off season is so long that we have a lot of time to experiment in different workforces, like different jobs or opportunities that we want to explore. So it is a huge, huge topic, because we're all doing it in the off season. If you're not playing overseas, people are coaching in the off season, or they're doing like broadcasting, and you're asking them, what are they doing? Trying to get ideas about what you want to do. So it's definitely something we talk about a lot.
I mentioned that you became a mom last year,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got the necklace on with Mila's name on it.
Yeah.
All of us try to create environments for work and life to be in harmony, whatever expression you want to use, work-life balance, work-life fit, etc. Like, describe what, assuming it was a relatively positive experience, describe what about the environment, what about the experience, what about the culture allowed you to both be a fantastic mom and have a successful re-entry onto the court in a pretty short period of time?
I have a great team behind me. They were, huge in helping me get back into shape, like to be ready to play games. Not my best shape, but functional enough to play, those 4 games. And we had a new CBA per our league in 2019. So the first year that I was in was the first year it was implemented, where if I didn't play a single game that year, I still would have gotten my full salary, which is like a huge load off, because like I said, I'm not necessarily working in the off season. I'm not playing overseas, 2 months postpartum. So that was like a huge load off. And then, they pay for like childcare services to a certain extent. Just really, they give you a lot of benefits to make it as easy as possible, because it's definitely not easy. Let me tell you, like being able to balance the work and life, it's really difficult. So they try to make it as accommodating as possible, which is really nice.
Love it. All right, a couple questions from the audience. We talked about trust. Give me 2 or 3 other attributes that you think were the best qualities of your youth sports coaches.
I would say accountability, holding us to a really high standard. That's what prepared me the most. And it's hard. Like, I don't know how it was for the coaches, but for the players, it's hard in the moment, like having such a high expectation, but it pushes you to be your best. If you don't have pressure on you, what's going to push you to work as hard as you can, or to go to that next step? So I'm really thankful that I had coaches with really high expectations for us. That was a huge one. And then I think passion. I've had really passionate coaches, which is really nice, because I'm pretty like even keeled. I don't like to show my emotion when I play. And so to have them, like, it always gets you hyped. It's super, super exciting. It's not my personality personally, but I love seeing it in other people. So that was always really fun. And then being able to like have not a different personality off the court, but being able to like joke with the players off the court, having that really high expectation on the court, but then being able to like be a person, you know, off where you can see their personality a little bit is always really cool. So I like those three things.
And I think on that last one, that's also probably an answer to the earlier question about if you tend to be a more direct yeller, in your words, that becomes even more important.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a second about parents or family members, to put it more broadly. You know, I have 4 athletes, but 1 high school age basketball player, and I find myself with my head buried in my hands a lot on the sidelines, listening to other parents in the crowd getting exercised and worked up about things that do not deserve to be worked up. And, you know, family members can be a real stress point for coaches, particularly at youth. Like, what advice do you have for coaches, and what advice do you have for parents? Because I am sure you've seen and experienced all ends of that spectrum, and people would love to get your insight.
Yes. For parents, I would say, honestly, try to be as hands off as you can. Like, you're not the coach for a reason. And you have to trust what the coach is doing. You put your child on this team for a reason. So you need to trust in the coach. If you're undermining them all the time, it doesn't build trust between your child and the coach and their teammates. It's going to create rifts within the team. So you really, unless you see something like obviously wrong, but if you just disagree with like a coaching style or something like that, like you should really just trust the coach, because I don't know. I feel like that's a really tough one for coaches, because the parents have to deal with one coach. The coach has to deal with like 30 parents. So that's really tough.
How about referees? You know, in all seriousness, there's a referee shortage in a bunch of sports in the United States. You know, I played soccer, and, you know, we have a major soccer referee shortage because the intersection of how much you get paid and how much abuse you get is not a very positive, you know, relationship. Do you think there's things that can be done by coaches, by players, by parents, by the leagues, to particularly at the youth level, to create a more healthy environment and relationship with officials?
Yeah, look, I get it. I mean, no one likes a ref, let's just be honest. But you need to teach respect within your team. Like, you need to tell the players, it's my job to talk to the ref. You're not talking to the ref. You're not complaining during the plays. Like, at least try to get that down. Maybe have like a meeting, especially at the youth level, like a meeting with the parents. Like, try not to yell at them so much. I will do it. If I see it, something's wrong, like, trust me, I'm going to get on the refs. But having, you know, 100 people yelling at them can't be fun. So especially the players, I would say just tell them to focus on the game and then try to get the parents to do the same.
Easier said than
done.
So I want to get back to feedback for a second. I'll tell you something I've been doing with my teams, and I just did it this week. And I'll be curious to see if you've ever experimented with, or teams you have with something similar, which is, I think peer level feedback is really powerful. And actually the entire group, seeing people receive and sort of process feedback is helpful. So one of the things I do once or twice a year is we do sort of an anonymous feedback survey, and people give feedback to everyone on the team. Here are the things we think you're exceptional at. Here are the things that if you did this better, you'd be the best version of yourself, et cetera. And you get an anonymous feedback report, and then you bring the whole team together and everyone shares, like, what'd you take away from the feedback you got from your teammates? And I found it to be a really powerful way to get shared accountability, and for creating an environment where feedback is comfortable, and frankly, where the star players, people like you, people see that they take feedback seriously and they want feedback from their teams. Have you ever seen that kind of feedback environment in any of your teams? And do you think peer level feedback in that kind of way has a home in sports?
I haven't seen that, but I really like it. I think the only time we've done that was when there's already a problem, which is never a good time to do that. When you have a team meeting, It's never the best time to give out grievances. So I think that's really, really great. And especially because it's anonymous, I think people will, you're not worried about hurting people's feelings like, oh, she said this about me. It's, it's more of a collective thing. And I like how you phrase it too. It's more positive. Like if you do this, you'll become the best player of yourself, like the best version of yourself instead of this is what you need to work on. So I think that's really, I like that a lot. I've never done it, but I think, like you said, I imagine it is really powerful for them.
All right, we'll experiment with it for the Minnesota Lynx this year. Interesting. A couple questions have come in on your youth sports history, including, did you play multiple sports growing up? This is an age-old debate about specialization. What was your experience?
Oh, I did play. I mean, I'm going to die on the hill that you need to play multiple sports. And I mean, professional trainers or trainers here, it builds different muscle groups. If you're wearing out the same muscles and like joints all the time, your body's going to break down in those places. So building from different sports, different muscle groups it'll help you in the other sports. So I'm a big advocate of multiple sports, and I didn't specialize until I was 17 years old. So.
All right. Well, I'm all in on that team too. And I have, kids that are pretty good at certain sports, and I'm pushing hard for them to keep doing the other ones for all the reasons you just described, including I think it's really helpful to not be the star player in a sport. If you're the star player in another sport, you learn a lot of lessons. We've talked about captains. Someone asked a very direct question, which is, what have you seen as the best ways that captains are chosen? And, we've seen lots of models. Coaches just pick. There's an actual vote. There's a vote which the coaches don't reveal the results of, and they still pick, but there's been input.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you think is the best way?
I think I don't know. That's kind of a tough one. How we do it here is the coach picks. So, but I've been on teams where the players pick. I think it's good when the players pick, because it's who they want to be their leaders. It's who they see as their leaders on their team and who they want to be peer led by. So I think I would probably choose that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've asked a lot about questions about culture. How would you describe the current Minnesota culture? And as you think about the year ahead, if there's one thing you hope you can improve, change, extend about the culture, what is it?
So one thing about Minnesota, the culture has been the same throughout the whole time Cheryl's been here, which I think is really great, because we attract a certain type of player, which is kind of what I talked about earlier. Like at our core, we want players who are coachable, willing to work hard, like good people, not bad apples per se. And that allows us to continue our culture, which is something we talk about almost every day. Like what we want to promote within our team, like team first, selflessness, like all of those things. So I really don't know what I would want to add, because I think what we have here is really special, just in the way that she promotes that culture, like through those team activities, which not everyone does. Just talking to my friends on other teams, like how our locker room, I showed you earlier, I'm like, no one's seen this, because it's supposed to be like a sacred place for us. Like we're not allowed to have non-teammates back here, or like in our facility. Like this is an us place, and it kind of creates almost like a college environment, which you don't have everywhere. That like camaraderie on the team, where this is an us thing and we're a family when we're here. So that's something that I really like about this place. And I think it's what's been, even when we don't have per se the most talent every year, what's kept us strong is like our culture is so strong, and it creates a really strong team chemistry.
Love it. Another question from the audience. I'll just read it as it came in. What are your thoughts on the impact of coach demeanor? And in particular, how does coach body language impact the player? Is coach body language something you notice?
Yes, it is. It definitely impacts the player as much as we don't want it to. And I said this earlier, like you want to take what the coach is saying without how they're saying it sometimes, but their demeanor, like you can tell when they're upset with you or like done with you or however that is. So if they're acting defeated or like that all the time, it is a huge bummer. And you're like looking over at the bench the whole time, like, what did I do? What did I do? So I think demeanor is a big thing, and that's for everything. Like you want to have, you never want to be, I don't know. demeanor, body language is a huge thing. So I think for coaches, you should definitely like just be aware of like how you're presenting yourself.
So let's talk about pre-15-year-old Fee, and your development as a basketball player. Like, did you play recreationally? Did you play with boys? Did you play pickup? Or were you in the elite travel AAU circuit from an early age? And Fee grew up in Missouri.
Yes. So I did play on a boys team when I was younger. And then I was in like elite AAU from an early age. So just playing all the time. I mean, I didn't even really have time to be in a rec league at home because we would practice, 4 or 5 times a week and then travel on the weekends. We were just really always playing. So I was in pretty deep with that early.
Someone wants to know what your favorite pump up song is right now. And then who controls the music in the locker room?
My favorite pump up song is probably Rich Flex, I think it's Rich Flex by Drake, and I forgot who else. 21 Savage, maybe. Oh yes, 21. So it was me for a little bit, and Kayla McBride does a little bit too, and Sylvia used to do it, but she's not here anymore. So I guess it's just down to us two.
I love it. Drake gets a lot of action in all the professional locker rooms.
He has some good pump up songs.
All right, Fee, it's been such a fun privilege to get to know you and your perspectives on leadership and your positivity. If there were a role model for Positive Coach Alliance, I think Fee Collier would be it. So I think you've made a lot of new Minnesota Lynx fans today, and we're psyched to see you succeed in your free agency recruiting, and have an awesome season, and keep being you. So as I turn it back to Casey, on behalf of PCA, Fee, huge thanks for the insight today.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you guys this year at some games.
Fee, Dan, thank you so much. In the chat, I just put links to Fee's Twitter and Instagram if you want to follow along on her journey. And you can learn more about Positive Coaching Alliance at positivecoach.org. So thank you everyone for joining. We will follow up with the recording so you can share it with your networks, and hope everybody has a wonderful weekend.